The average American retires at the age of 64, but the life expectancy of that same American is merely 77 years old. Most of our lives, we're taught that when we reach our 60s, that's the time that we should be retiring. That's when government benefits like Social Security and Medicare start to kick in, as well as that's the time when you can start withdrawing from your retirement accounts because most of them start to allow you to withdraw at the age of 59 and a half. But imagine for a moment that the societal norm of retiring in your 60s did not exist. If we drew life on a timeline, would it make sense that we retire in our 60s yet have so little time left to enjoy it? In this video, I want to break down how we can retire as soon as possible, step by step, so that we can have more time to enjoy the things that we want to do in life. The first thing we need to understand is how retirement is defined in our society. It's not based off of your intelligence, your work ethic, or how many years you've worked. In fact, it all just comes down to one thing, and that is money. You can call it wealth, you can call it total assets, you can call it whatever you like, but the main point is that we need enough money or assets to basically fund the rest of our life while we're not working. Now, enough money for you is going to differ from what your friends, your family, or even strangers on the internet might want you to have, so everyone's calculations are going to be a little bit different. But in my opinion, it really comes down to three things that we actually need to answer first. So I actually found this resource online. It's a retirement calculator, and we can see that the variables we need to figure out are these top three lines right here: current annual income, current annual savings, and current annual expenses. If you know the answers to these three things, we can work backwards and figure out our quickest possible route to get there. So let's actually start by talking about your yearly expenses first. I think this is the biggest factor when it comes to figuring out how we're gonna retire as quickly as possible. And then later on in this video, we're gonna go over 4 must-dos that I think everyone should consider when trying to retire early. If you know how much money you're going to spend every single year, especially in retirement, it's going to guide exactly how much money you need to have invested to live off of. If you're young or you just wanna retire in say 10 years and you want your money to last forever, it's recommended that you have a 4% safe withdrawal rate. That means you're allowed to spend 4% of what you have invested in your portfolio every single year, and you can do that indefinitely without running out of money. So if you had an investment portfolio of $500,000, you could spend 4% of that every single year, or $20,000 and spend every year. If you had $1 million in a portfolio, you could spend $40,000 every year, and so on and so forth. The idea here is that your portfolio is going to make up for any inflation that you might experience, as well as any taxes that you might have to pay, as well as continue to appreciate as you withdraw money from it. So in this way, we can actually see that the amount that you spend on a yearly basis is going to be the #1 variable and contributing factor to how much you actually need in retirement. Now, in terms of what to invest in when it comes to your portfolio to basically fund your retirement indefinitely, most financial experts will suggest investing in a total stock market index fund. Index funds like VTSAX, which is Vanguard's total stock market index fund, or the ETF equivalent VTI, since its inception in 2001, it has returned an average of 8.21% per year. I have a ton of videos for you guys on exactly what to consider when you're investing in order to withdraw at a safe withdrawal rate, and I will link those down below as well as at the end of this video. So assuming that we're using a 4% safe withdrawal rate, which is what most people should use, we should basically multiply our current spend every single year by 25, and that should be our nest egg number that we need to get to. That's the simple rule of thumb for most of you guys out there. If you just take your current yearly spend, let's say it's $50,000, multiply it by 25, then you need a nest egg of $1.25 million to withdraw that every single year without running out of money. Now, in order to get there as quickly as possible, we need to figure out the next variable, variable number 2, which is our current savings amount and our savings rate. You see, as your savings rate increases, this is actually a two-pronged effect. So if your savings rate increases, that actually just means you're spending less money. When you're spending less money, you technically don't need to save as much money because that's going to get you to your nest egg number, or what's called your FIRE number, quicker. FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. It's a subreddit that you can find on the Reddit forums, and it's basically a community of people that are trying to retire as quickly as possible. Their main plan is to save 30, 50, or even 70% of their yearly income every single year, and they do that by being extremely frugal and making sacrifices in the short term in order to get to financial independence a lot faster. Now, if we simply play around with that retirement calculator that I mentioned earlier, you can see that someone with a current annual income of $75,000 and a 70% savings rate can retire in 8 years. As soon as you turn that savings rate down to 50%, which is still a lot of savings, by the way, it's going to take you a little bit longer, so 14.3 years instead of the 8 years from earlier. And then if you turn that savings rate even lower to 20%, it's going to take you much longer to get there, 28.5 years. Now, if we play around with this calculator enough, we can create a table, play around with the savings rates, and then just figure out how many years we need to work in order to retire. As your savings rate increases by 5% throughout the table, we can see that the number of of working years will actually decrease disproportionately. At a savings rate of 10%, we can see that it takes 51 years of working until you hit retirement. As we go down the table, we can actually see that it becomes a lot easier to retire as our savings rate increases. In fact, it gets really good at the 65% savings rate mark. That's where you could start to potentially retire within a decade. Now, what's really fascinating about this entire table is that most Americans, they have a savings rate of 4.5%. That means if our savings rate is of the average American, it's gonna take us forever to retire. That's why if you're watching this channel, hopefully you're striving for a little bit more than a 5% savings rate. Hopefully you're aiming for at least 15% or even higher. All right, so let's go through an example of what it would take to retire at different types of spend levels. So let's say you are the age of 30 right now and you really wanna retire in 10 years, which is pretty reasonable. I mean, who doesn't wanna retire at 40, right? Your current spend is $40,000 a year and you're just going to maintain that spend in perpetuity, as well as the fact that you have an average savings balance of around $30,000 in your portfolio right now, because that is the actual average savings balance of someone who's less than the age of 35 in America. So if you want to spend 40K a year, we're going to need at least $1 million portfolio in order to do that. And that means we're going to need to invest at least $63,000 every single year for 10 years, getting an 8% return. What does that look like? Well, that means if you're spending $40,000 a year, you need to be making at least $103,000 after tax in order to get to that number. So that means your ideal pre-tax income is $147,000 per year or more. This essentially means that while you're spending on your lifestyle of $40,000 per year for the next 10 years, you're also saving enough money and investing and getting a compound return on that money in order to get to that point where you can retire in 10 years with a nest egg of $1 million. Now, that's a 62% savings rate, which is incredibly tough to achieve. I acknowledge that, as well as a $147,000 pre-tax income. Now, if you make less money and you're okay retiring in, say, 15 years instead of 10 years, then your savings rate doesn't have to be as high. In fact, you can achieve this with a 46% savings rate, as well as an after-tax income of $75,000 if you're okay retiring in 15 years. That's a little bit more manageable, but still, that might still be out of reach for some people. So what if we want to retire on less money? We can still feasibly retire in 20 years with a smaller income and even smaller of a savings rate. If we earn roughly $58,000 a year after tax, which is $82,000 before tax, and we have a savings rate of 32%, then we can feasibly retire within 20 years based on the math. 20 years might seem like a long time, but it's still way faster than how the average American retires by the time they're 65 years old. So for example, if you're 20 years old right now, you could probably retire by the time you're 40 based on this math, instead of having to wait till you're 65. I wanted to show you guys all these examples to just show you how much the savings rate and how much you currently spend is going to dictate how early you can retire. How much you save on a yearly basis is going to be a really big factor in how quickly you can retire, and that's why we want to make sure that lifestyle creep is not creeping up on us. If you're making lifestyle choices like trying to keep up with your friends or buying that new fancy car or going on those luxury vacations all the time, then that's possibly literally costing you your freedom of retirement later on. The third factor is our current income, and this is going to basically determine how quickly we can get to our FIRE number. If you make more money, you'll be able to get to retirement a lot sooner. This is pretty much a fact of life as long as your expenses stay the same. Being able to retire is not cheap, nor is it easy, and having more money in the bank and having more money coming in is going to help you in that journey. Now, you don't have to find a better paying job or even a side hustle to increase your income. If you want a creative solution on how to increase your pay, then you might want to consider the location that you live in. Oftentimes, I'll get comments from teachers and other types of jobs that have a limited upside when it comes to their industry. So basically, if you're a teacher, it's hard to increase your income past a certain level. So I was trying to think of a creative solution for you guys in how you could increase your income, and the example that I came up with is the following. Let's say you're a teacher in Tennessee. The average pay there for a teacher is $53,619 per year. If you saved 10% of your income in Tennessee, you're saving $5,361 per year. Now, if you were to consider a lateral move, let's say you went to a school district in Massachusetts instead, the average teacher salary in Massachusetts is $88,903 per year. If you save 10% of your income there, then you're going to be saving $88.90 per year, which is almost $3,500 more than you would be saving in Tennessee. What you can do then is just do this for a number of years and then move back to Tennessee when you are ready to retire, and then basically your cost of living is going to be a lot lower for the rest of your life. This type of strategy can be applied to many different jobs with limited upward mobility, especially within certain industries, and I do acknowledge that it takes some sacrifice as well as some flexibility in the fact that you're going to basically uproot your entire life and move somewhere else. So it does have some of its flaws, but it is a creative solution solution that I thought of. All right, let's talk about my 4 must-dos in order to help you reach retirement as quickly as possible. The first thing you must do is define your retirement preferences and also be flexible on how they might change. So do you want to spend 20K a year, 40K a year, 60K a year in retirement? Perhaps you want to spend as much money as possible and just never have to think about it. Figure out your retirement preferences early and don't be afraid to reevaluate it every single year. You might get to a point where you're able to retire early, but you realize, hey, it's going to be pretty boring if I'm just sitting around retired all day, so I'd rather just do a little bit of part-time work. The second thing you must do is to avoid lifestyle creep, as well as avoid any life decisions that derail your compounding. Things like buying a crazy fancy new car, or perhaps investing in a get-rich-quick scheme which asks you for a lot of money up front but is a risky frontier. We want to avoid those things. Third, we want to plan for as much as we can, not just with your investments, but also with your relationships, including your family decisions. So in terms of retiring early and the investment side, we got to really think and plan, when are we going to retire early, and then at what point do we have perhaps a retirement account with preferred tax rates. If you're retiring early, you should plan for the age that you're technically retired versus the age that your retirement accounts allow you for distributions. For example, with the Roth IRA, you could withdraw money at the age of 59 and a half, but if you were retiring at the age of 40, this actually creates a little bit of a gap. You want to be able to strike a balance between when you can withdraw from your taxable investment accounts versus when you're going to switch over to your different types of retirement accounts. Next, if you are currently single, your future partner may be a huge factor in if you can retire early or not. Once you get married, you're adding another variable into the entire situation, and your partner and you should have a heartfelt talk on whether or not retiring early is a priority for both of you or just one of you. If you do marry someone with similar goals, then you should be stronger together and be able to retire even faster than most average people. Now, if you have children, you probably already know this, but children are very expensive. So you just want to plan accordingly, knowing that if you're going to have kids, it might take a little bit longer to retire. This should go without saying. If you don't have kids, you don't have that big expense of having a child, but you might be able to retire a lot faster. The fourth must do is try to keep your investment fees as low as possible. Don't try to time the market and just avoid bad debt. When it comes to this stuff, at the end of the day, it just really is about enjoying your life, and that might change from day to day or even year to year. So it's important to be flexible and just live out the many versions of life might present to you. I hope this video helps you out. I'm going to leave my video up on the 4% rule right here or right here. It's a very detailed explanation on how the safe withdrawal rate actually works based on math. All right, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.